What's up, everybody? Well, today I'm here to show you another vacuum that's in my vacuum collection. This time it is something rare and unique, and that was kind of a love-hate relationship for most vacuum collectors. And this actually is a very interesting piece of vacuum history. What I have for you here is essentially one of the many Oreck knockoffs of its time, the Garry Ultralight Professional Upright Vacuum. This vacuum was made back in the late 2000s and the early 2010s to basically be a competitor to the Oreck XL upright. As many people know, the Oreck XLs are essentially the king of lightweight upright vacuums. And this company, Garry, came up completely out of nowhere. And I'm sure a lot of you probably remember seeing the commercials on these things back when they were new. Especially the 30-minute paid advertisement for this thing that was basically designed to be a competitor to the Oreck XL of the time. And I have always wanted to try one out because I've never seen many videos on this, especially by vacuum collectors. I do remember there was one posted years ago, but that got taken down, unfortunately. There is one other YouTuber that's on there that has a few videos of his Garry vac, but there were not many videos on this aside from the commercials back then. And for those of you who don't know what the Garry vacuum company is, that was essentially another vacuum company that is now no more because they eventually went bankrupt for fraud, because there are a lot of things on this that were not very well designed, and some, I think, in my opinion, were honestly Oreck knockoffs. I'm not too sure if Oreck actually sued the Garry company, which ultimately made them run bankrupt, or if it was that big scam on the free bags for life. But now the company is no more, and there are some of these vacuums that are strung around with barely any parts to get, and you'll be lucky if you have one that's fully functional. To which, if anyone probably remembers seeing my repair video on 3 of these vacuums, this is one of the working ones I was able to get, and I thought I'd make a video for you since there are not many videos out. So, even though I may not have done all my history on Garry vacuums, I wanted to always try one out because there are some people that like them and some people that hate them, and I wanted to see for myself. So far, my impressions for this thing are actually pretty good. There are some improvements, and there are some design flaws over the original Oreck. And one of them being the handle design, which it's not perfectly designed for like the Oreck, where it's perfectly horizontal for people with arthritis. I think Oreck called that the helping hand handle, which was designed by an orthopedic surgeon to help for people with arthritis. This doesn't have that perfect design, but it works good. You have your fingertip on-off switch right here. This is only a single speed, I would like to point that out. I have not seen a Garry with 2-speed. I don't think they even made one. But anyway, typical design, which is very similar to an Oreck. You have an external power cord that runs down to the main motor right there, and then it splits right up here for the power switch, and then you have an actual power cord right on the back. And as we move on down, here is the outer bag. You have your nice Garry lettering on the front there, and you have your Ultralight Professional in horizontal lettering there. And down here is the hypoallergenic filtration. with germidical protection, very similar to Oreck XL Plus protection, which basically is just extra filters inside, filter material inside the outer bag just to prevent dust from spewing back into the air, which it does pretty good, but not as good as an Oreck. And speaking of Oreck, I did have to rig a bag for this thing because bags are not available for these things anymore. And here is the bag that I am running in this. And there were little specks of dust that fell down in there, but I'll get to that later. But I did rig an Oreck CC bag to run in this thing because I could not find replacement bags for the life of me for this thing because they're are just unobtainable now. But the way I rigged this bag system to work in this is one nice thing I found is the CC bags from Oreck actually have the same shape collar opening as the Garry bags. The only difference is to run this, you will have to trim the Oreck collar to get it to fit on this weird docking system. For whatever reason, since Garry couldn't use Oreck's bags, they had to use their own docking setup, which was very lazily designed, in my opinion, and not really as effective as the Oreck design was. You can rig Oreck CC bags to run in this, but you will have to trim the collar on the Oreck bag. I was able to do this in enough so it's still, well, sort of. You will lose the self-sealing feature because it won't seal up all the way. In fact, if I were to do this all over again, I would just pulled out that little self-sealing thing because it's useless now. So anyway, I now get HEPA filtration out of this thing, so that is nice to have. So basically to mount it on, you simply put the little tabs in there, then it will latch from the top. Just make sure it's on all the way so it gets a nice somewhat seal. So that solves the bag situation for this thing. So as we move on down here, very nice, sleek designed hood. The headlights in this are LED, and I will show that later in the video. And let's go ahead and show you the underneath of the cleaner. Here is the brush roll on this thing, which one thing I will say about this, the brush roll is honestly the biggest thing that saves this vacuum when it comes to cleaning performance. It does have a semi-stiff brush roll. The bristles are a little bit on the soft side, but the bristles are very, very long, which is one thing I really like about this. A lot of people may remember the Oreck brush rolls have super, super soft bristles, but they're very dense. So it definitely does good with pet hair pickup. So I imagine this would do a little bit better when it comes to carpet agitation, but I'm not too sure about pet hair pickup. Now this is the early design brush roll for these things. There was a later version that eventually went to the soft and dense bristles like Oreck's do, and I do have another Garry vac that has that brush roll. But I will show that later in a video for a cleaning performance difference. I will eventually do a cleaning performance on this, then compare it to that one. So that's one thing I like, because the motor in this, which is a 3.5 amp motor, it's a little bit smaller than the Oreck XL Classics are, because those are 4 amps. But the one similarity that this has to the Classic Oreck XL is the fan impeller is exactly the same. Don't believe me? The fan replacement for this, since you can't buy it from Garry anymore, since the company went bankrupt, you can actually buy an Oreck replacement fan for these Garrys. The part number is OR-2800. That fan will fit a Garry. And that is what I've actually put into this when I replace the fan. So the fan is pretty much the same as a classic Oreck XL. So it does pull a little bit more airflow than the Oreck, but the reason why is because the opening here is a little bit larger. So you can draw a little bit more airflow than the Oreck would. So, but it's not by much. Keep that in mind. The fan opening is a little bit bigger, so it'll draw a little bit more airflow than a classic XL would, but it's not by much. But anyway, here is the model number right here. There is the cleaner model GL100. That's the model number of this. It's 120 volts, 60 hertz, 3.5 amps. Very small motor. And it's by Envion LLC. Made in China, unfortunately. So that's one big downfall to these things. The Orecks back then were actually US made, but they are still assembled in the USA. The Orecks are, but now they're getting parts outsourced more likely than not from China. So, yeah. And one more final thing before I give you a little running demonstration of this. What really makes this vacuum stand out from an Oreck, and this is what makes it a lot different from its lightweight competitors, is it has this nice onboard hose. Now, unfortunately, I did kink it a little by laying it on its back, but hopefully that shouldn't do that much damage. But anyway, yep, these Orecks, the Garrys, excuse me, do come with onboard hoses. That's one thing that they really like to do back then to set these apart from an Oreck, because as many people know, Orecks do not come with onboard hoses. And here's how it mounts along the back. So it essentially loops around the back on the front and connects at the back. And it is actually controlled by a little suction diverter valve right here that switches from floor to your tools. In fact, let me give you a little view of the trap door right there. Well, let me see if I could show you in the lighting a little better. Or can I? But see, there's a little trap door inside there that will, oh, there it is. There is a trap door that will open and close and divert the suction to wherever you need it. So that's the way that you get tool suction on this thing. So actually, let's make sure it's on floor for the demonstration later in the video. You do have your attachments mounted in the back pocket right here. Your two extension wands on either side. Then down underneath, you do have your crevice tool, your dusting brush, and your upholstery tool. So it's nice that you do have attachments, which is very convenient to have for something like this, even though the suction performance is really not that good. But it's nice to be able to just pull the hose out, switch to tools, and then you can use your onboard hose instead of just having to stop and go fetch a separate hand vac just to use your tools. But anyway, enough of that said, let's go ahead and release the power cord, which seems to be pretty long, I will admit. I think this has had to be at least in the 30-foot range. So let's go ahead and plug this guy in. And we'll go ahead and turn this thing on and demo it for you guys so you can just see how this runs. Power switch is on the front here. And typical direct air vacuum fashion, this thing is pretty loud when it's running. And headphone users, I would like to let you know, turn down your volume. And this thing has, since it has almost the same motor and fan design, this does sound like an Oreck when it's running. So, but anyway, here we go. that is how it runs. Definitely sounds good after replacing the fan. But before we end the video, I'll go ahead and demonstrate this to you in tool mode. Now, to go into tool mode, just simply flip the little diverter, the suction diverter, to the tool setting. And don't expect miracle suction for this because of how small the motor is, and also the fact that this is direct air. It's not going to have very good suction. In fact, this is honestly the worst tool suction I've ever seen out of one of these direct air vacuums. I've had Hoover Elites that can do better tool suction than this. But to me, it isn't terrible. Here's how long the reach is with the two extension wands. Now let's go and get out the attachments. Here's the crevice tool. Dusting brush. The nice thing about this is that this little end piece will actually swivel. And lastly, your upholstery tool. I do like that this has little lint brushes, which will definitely be good for catching pet hair. Anyway, that is just how good this thing runs. It doesn't really have the best tool suction, I will admit that. Which I honestly think is why this wasn't that successful. And also there are other reasons why this vacuum wasn't very successful in its day. And also the fact that they were trash-talking Oreck, which at the same time they offer Oreck parts to be able to fix this should it ever need to be serviced. So let's go ahead and put those back on the tool storage rack. And there we have it. Well, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this full house cleaning and video, actually, I should say, on the Garry Ultralight upright vacuum. Be sure and stay tuned, and don't forget to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.